Stay standing. It's good volume, good for everybody back there. Or? Good.
That up high. Okay. I'll teach you the basics. Don't worry. Not everyone can be.
Now is it good?
Like me.
All right. So we will be turning to 1 Kings 17. And don't get it wrong. Today I'm preaching about Elijah. I am going to talk about one other person. Sounds just like Elijah. It's Elisha. Don't get them mixed up. They're two different people. So in 1 Kings 17, read 1 through 7. And Elijah, the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord of God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook, Cherith that is before Jordan, and it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So he went and did according unto the word of the Lord. For he went and dwelt by the brook of Cherith that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. And it came to pass, after that while, the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Obi's not here. Derek, can you open us in prayer, please?
Father God, thank you, Lord, that we're all here able to gather, Lord, to lift you up, God, to get something from the Word of God this morning, Lord.
Amen.
Speak to Damien today, God. Lord, just fill him up with your Holy Spirit, Lord. Just give him the words to preach and the things to say today, God.
Yep.
I pray you be all over the message, Lord. I pray you will be kids service as well, God. I pray you just take care of that. I pray for the activities that are going on later, Lord. I just want to praise you. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You're going to be seated. So in this, it talks about Elijah. The Lord, in the first verse, it says the Lord has sent no rain Elijah is telling Ahab that the Lord told him that there's going to be no rain in the years to come. And so Elijah here is going off his faith of what the Lord is telling him. And that's what we should do. We should go off the faith of what the Lord tells us and listen to him, not to anybody else, the Lord. And the Lord, because the Lord is the one that's going to direct you through your paths. And in verse number 1, it says, but according to my word, there's going to be no rain. That means there's going to be a drought for 3 years. It's not going to rain at all. It's just going to be hot, sunny. That's it. No rain, nothing. And then in the next verse, it says, and the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, and then it says, Get thee hence, and turn eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan. So Elijah listened to the Lord. I mean, personally, if I was just standing here or at home, and the Lord told me, yo, hey, you should go near that brook, because it's not going to rain. I'd go, I think you're lying to me. Come on, why would I do that? I think it's going to rain. See, that's what we put in our mind. That's what we think. But we always have to follow him and know what he wants, right? So if we tell him no and we don't do that, we're going to be sitting at home now and you're not going to have any rain, no water, so you're going to sooner or later dehydrate. So you got to follow him. So that's what Elijah did. So Elijah, he went to this brook. He sat next to the brook. And he's like, Lord, what do you want me to do now? What do I need to do? And the Lord's like, you just stay here. I'll feed you. And he's like, Lord, how are you going to feed me? He's like, just wait. I'll show you. The next day, when he needs food, a bird. You know how birds, chew up the food and then give it to their babies? That's what he did for Elijah. The birds, nasty, I know, but hey, if you need food, you need water, you're going to do something, right? So the Lord took ravens, flew the ravens to the brook. It's weird as it sounds. I don't know how, but they must have just went there. The ravens dropped them food and flew away. I don't know. I don't know what I'd say. I'd be surprised, but I mean, it's the Lord. You can't always be surprised. He's always there, and he does what he says. And then it says in verse 4, and it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook. So the Lord's telling him to drink of the brook. Remember, there's a drought. So I don't know where this water is coming from. So Elijah's probably confused also. And then he's drinking of this brook, and God has plans in your life that you don't know they're coming, but the plans that he has are going to pan out unless you don't follow him. And that's the issue nowadays of kids. They just They just think of what they want in their mind, like going out to drink every night, going to this house and partying. That's not exactly what you need, because sooner or later that ends you up in jail, ends you doing stupid things, and just it's not a good mindset, because when you start drinking, you can't comprehend. You don't, especially when you get past a certain extent of certain amount of alcohol and consumption into your body, you don't know, your mind just doesn't know where you're at. And the Lord's telling him, in this passage is telling him, I have a plan for you. I want you to be at this place at this time, and my plan will pan out for you. So if you do that, you'll be perfectly fine during this drought. So then, after the fact that he plans this, Elijah's there, and Elijah's like, God, what else can I do for you during this drought? And God's like, I think I know what I can do for you. So now what God does is dries up the river. So after God dries up the river, he tells Elijah, he's like, Elijah, I want you to go and see this woman, this widow woman in this place. So everyone turn to Kings 17, 1 Kings 17. Oh, I'm already here. 8:24. 8 through 24 is going to talk about this widow woman. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I am commended a widow woman there to sustain thee. So he arose, went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go and dress it for me and my son, and that we may eat and die. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son. For thus saith the Lord, God of Israel, The barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day of the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah, and she and he and her house did eat many days. So Elijah goes to this widow woman's house. She's already outside. What a perfect timing. Collecting sticks for her so-called last meal. If you have that so-called last meal in your life, you need to have trust in God that He's going to send someone your way. When Elijah goes to her house, he's standing there and he's like, I need you to fetch me, some bread and some water, please. And she's like, well, this is my last. Like, I have none left. Like, this is just going to feed me and my son, and then we're going to die. And Elijah's like, no. God sent me here. I need this cake. I need this bread for please. And then she was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. I guess I'll give you the last bit. And then Elijah was like, yeah, and you'll still have a little bit left for you and your son. And then she's like, oh, okay. So she goes, she does all this for him. And then as she's doing this for him, Elijah prayed unto God, and God told Elijah to tell her that, verse, let me find it right. Look in verse 14. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, The barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. Now you ask me, what does that mean? I mean, it's kind of right there. It means that the God is telling them that they have just a little meal left. Nah, it's going to last forever. It's never going to run out. Your food's never going to run out. Even though you see a little bit left, it'll last you years. It'll last you until the rain cometh, which is 3 years. And so I personally don't know if I was a widow woman, I'd think that the guy's crazy, saying that this little bit of food is going to last me years. Personally, for me, that's lasting me one night. And then they tell me the oil burns fast. So I don't know what they're trying to do, but she's probably all confused. Like, how does this man say that this little bit of oil and this little bit of food is going to last me years. Personally, like I'd say he's crazy. I personally would say he's crazy. And then go down to verse 17, and it says, "And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick. And the sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And she said unto Elijah, What have I do to thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? And he said unto her, Give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom, and carried him up into a loft, where he abode and laid him upon his bed. And he cried out unto the Lord, and said, O Lord my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourn by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried unto the Lord, and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come back into him again. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again. And he revived him. Elijah took the child, and brought him down out of the chamber unto the house, and delivered him into his mother's. And Elijah said, See, thy son liveth. And the woman said to Elijah, Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and thou hast the word of the Lord in the mouth of the truth. So in those verses that I've just read, if you didn't comprehend what Elijah was doing, so her son was super sick with a disease that they had no idea how to do anything for, because back then they didn't know medicine or anything to like kill off things and stuff like that. So this woman was like, Elijah, you came to my house, you fed me, I understand, but you killed my son. And so she put it in her mind that Elijah was only there for something that he wanted. She didn't realize that there was more to it than just him coming there. And so, as it says, he brought him upstairs into the loft. And when it says in verse 21, and he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord, I personally think that he laid him on his bed and he prayed over him. He bowed over him. I have no idea. Doesn't exactly say, but he is praying over him. And then the woman's like, why did you do that? But in our lives, we would be the woman, and God would be Elijah. And in our lives, we pretend like someone is Elijah, and we always say, oh, you did that. I want to blame you for that. That's not something you want to do, though, because if you knew it was that person's fault, you should talk to them. You shouldn't blame people for doing certain things that you know they didn't do, because that's how everything just gets messed up, and then the argument comes, and then divisions between certain people come, and you don't know what's happening. So in your life, you shouldn't blame other people. You should go to them. You should talk to them. You should explain to them what was going on, and then you should have a man-to-man or a woman-to-woman conversation about one of you guys messing up in certain places, and go by the Bible, see what the Bible says about certain things, and you take care of it. That's how you should do it. And then I will talk about Elisha right now. So Elijah, all right? So Elijah was, after he met this widow woman, he was figuring out what God was going to do for him next. So God told him, after the fact of him, so basically he went up to a hill, right? Oh, he was with Jezebel, and there was a story that Elijah had to go and preach the word and try and get, so there was these people of Baal worship. That's what Jezebel and Ahab Ahab was the king and Jezebel was his wife, and that's what their people worshipped, was Baal. And Baal was like, it was terrible. Like, you had to sacrifice certain things because, different story. So Jezebel and Ahab, they knew that Elijah was there. They hated Elijah. They had nothing to do with Elijah because they already knew that God existed, because God showed up many a times for Jezebel and Ahab, and they still don't want to believe him because they want to have the power for themselves. And that's what we are like in our lives. We want the power for ourselves. We don't want to trust in someone that we can't see for Because, it's just, faith, someone can have faith in something but not believe it. Well, yeah, he rose him from the dead, so I'm pretty sure I'd believe in him. And you also got to go to the fact of Elijah was following God, and these others weren't. So they went to a little city, and there was like 100 or 200 or 1,000 or whatever people that went there, and everyone was against Elijah. It was the Baal worshippers and Elijah. They were told during a drought, to grab 12 barrels, like huge barrels of water, like wooden huge barrels, and they were told to put 12 of them onto a thing. And they didn't want to do it, but Elijah told them, do it. So they had to burn up a sacrifice, because Elijah told the Baal worshippers, I want you to burn up that sacrifice in this certain amount of time. And these Baal worshippers prayed and prayed and prayed unto their so-called God to burn up the sacrifice before Elijah can do his. Elijah was like, I'll give him some time. I'll let him about a day. I'll give him a couple hours. Let's see if their so-called God will burn up the sacrifice. So Elijah was kind of being a little, about it, but he's like, I don't think it's going to work, So then Elijah was like that, and then all the Baal worshippers, nothing happened after, I think it's like 8 hours, 10 hours, nothing. Not a single peep, not even a single flame, nothing to burn up that sacrifice that they had there. And so Elijah's like, are you guys done? Like, can I do mine? And they're like, no, let us do it. They believe that their so-called God could do it. So they did it. But then the gruesome part, which turns into nowadays, is them guys that were there, they started cutting themselves, because that's how they showed their God that they were serious about something. They started cutting themselves. They started hurting themselves because they wanted their God to burn up the sacrifice for them. And God was like, or God knew everything was happening, and he was like, that's what they think. That's, let it happen, Elijah. And Elijah just sitting back, just watching, like, I don't know what these, man, why are they cutting themselves? Like, and he's like, in his mind, he's like, why are they doing that? And so Elijah was like, okay, stop. Elijah's like, let me do my thing. So Elijah's like, you stay right there. Elijah's like, I want you to go get me 12 barrels of water. Actually, you too, yeah. Go get 12 barrels of water. They go, get 12 barrels of water, throw it on this sacrifice that they have. It's soaked. Everything's drenched. And then Elijah was like, I think it took him an hour, 2 hours, somewhere around there, of him praying, like 30 minutes or something like that, praying constantly. And he's like, God, can you please burn up the sacrifice? Show these guys that you mean serious business and you want them to turn over to you and not Baal worship that's not real. And he's like, okay. Whoom! Tons of fire. Burn up the whole sacrifice. Everything was gone. Everything was dry. All the water was gone. And then they were all like, no way. That actually happened? Yeah, Elijah's like, yeah, it just happened. And then all of them were like, oh, well, I don't, there was, I think 100 of them or 200 of them, 100 of them that didn't believe it still. Oh, man. I don't know how they can't believe that fire just came from the sky in front of the face, burnt up tons of water, and the sacrifice they had there, and they still can't believe that God is real. So Elijah took them 100 guys, went down to the river, and slew them. That's what God told him to do, because they didn't want to believe. So after the fact that happened, Elijah was like, okay, guys, he has these certain amount of Israelites that want to follow him again. So they started following him, and then Jezebel, the evil woman that she is, she was like, Elijah, by tomorrow at this time, you will be dead. And at this time, Jezebel is Ahab's wife, but Ahab is more of a baby than Jezebel. If Ahab wants something, he goes to Jezebel. If Jezebel wants something, she gets it herself. And that's not how you should be in real life. You should be a man of your household. You should do something. Like if your wife wanted something, you can do it, but you should be the man of the household in that certain situation, right? you got to take care of your wife. But Ahab wasn't that kind of man. He was more of the baby kind. He just went away and cried because he wanted to get away with something, like a little baby with a toy. If you don't give them something, you know what they're going to do? Cry. And when they cry, you got to give them the toy because they're just going to keep crying, or that's it. So that's what Jezebel does to Ahab. Gives him everything he wants. So during this time, Jezebel says, I'm gonna send people to kill you. And then Elijah, for some reason, I don't know why, he knew he had God on his side. But he goes, oh no, Jezebel's going to kill me. I'm going to run away. So he runs away. He runs under a sycamore, I think it's tree. Runs under a sycamore tree and a juniper tree. My bad. A juniper tree. He's sitting on the top of a mountain now. After the fact that Jezebel told him that she was going to kill him, right? And now, during this time, Elijah, for some reason, just basically said, God, you can't deal with that anymore. And why are we like that? Why are we like, if bad times come, oh, that's there, then God's not real because he's not helping me with that. Well, you have to think. You have to think about it. God puts storms in your life to make sure that you have faith in him. He doesn't just throw storms in your way and is like, deal with it. He's always there. He just wants to test your faith. And that's something that we all should realize. For Elijah in this point, he just didn't have any faith after Jezebel told he was going to kill him. So then he went under this juniper tree and he started crying. He's like, Lord, I just want to die. Please take me away because Jezebel said she was going to kill me. Lord, please. And so he fell asleep. Then an angel of the Lord came, brought him bread as soon as he woke up. He woke up, there's bread there. And he was like, Lord, I just want to die. I don't want any food, Lord. And he just kept feeding him, like a couple days, and just kept feeding him. And see, kids nowadays in our world, there are just like Elijah. If someone says something bad about them, they go and cry about it. They get all depressed because this person said something about them, and they just want to, express their feelings so other people can notice them. Like everyone in the school, if you're public school, you probably know, a lot of kids are depressed. Like depression is real, of course, but they get to a certain state of they just want attention. They just want attention for certain things because they don't have friends or something, but that's what Elijah's like right now. He's running away because someone said something bad about him. We shouldn't be like that. We should stick with the Lord. Lord, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but can it be this way? Like, can it happen a different way, Lord, please? And that's what Elijah should have done, but Elijah instead ran away scared. So then, don't be discouraged in your life if you have these people like a Jezebel in your life that are going to discourage you from doing something God told you to do. If God tells you something to do, you need to do it. Don't be discouraged because some person, Jezebel person, told you that it was wrong or she was going to do this to you or they were going to do that to you, because you know that God has the truth and you know that God is going to tell you what to do at certain times. And so after that, Elijah stopped being a baby about it and he was like, oh, okay, Lord, what else do you want me to do now? So and then the Lord tells him, Elijah, you go to this place. That he went to a cave with tons of Israelites there because they were hiding them. And then after that, story time. Funny, no, I won't say it's funny, but it's kind of, and I don't know. So Ahab was at the city on his throne, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you want to call it. And Elijah was up on a mountain. So during this time, Elijah was like, I want to talk to Ahab. But Ahab, being the baby he is, doesn't want to face him face to face. He wants him inside the city, so if Elijah tried to attack him, he wouldn't die. So what Ahab did was sent 50 people with a leader. And these guys came up to the thing. Actually, we'll turn to it right now. 2 Kings 1, 9 through 15. So in here it says, Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 and his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of a hill, and he spake unto him, Thou man of God. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So basically Elijah's sitting there and was like, and then they asked him, Are you the man of God? And Elijah's like, Yep. And they're like, Now show us you're the man of God. And he's like, Okay. So what he did was like, I'm going to tell you right now, if there's 50 of you guys, I'm going to send fire from heaven, and it's going to burn the 50 of you up, and there's going to be nothing left. Boom, it happens. And then Ahab, stupid enough, I guess, sends another 50 with another captain. And then the guy was like, you're the man of God, right? And Elijah's like, Yep. And then they're like, Now show us you're the man of God. And Elijah's like, Okay, all right, you didn't learn. Boom! More fire. Burn all of them. All of them disappeared again. And then the third captain came and dropped to his knees and wept, Please do not kill us, for we believe in your God. And then Elijah realized, he's like, okay, so these guys actually mean business. They know who I am, and they know who my God is. And so, at that time, God was like, yes, you can trust them. You can go with them. And during this time, this is how we should be with God in our life. We shouldn't be laid back and like, oh, you're the man of God. Should I believe you? Show me something. We should believe him ourselves. We should know that we can follow him. We should know that whatever he tells us, we can do. You know, don't be one of them Debbie Downers that sits back and is like, God's not real. Show me something. Show me he's real. Spawn an elephant right there. I think that'll show me he's real. No. That's not what we need. We need to have faith that God will do something. We don't need to have miracles like these guys do now to show them that that's who God is and that's what God needs to do for them. No. God doesn't need to do anything for you. You need to follow him and have faith in him that he will do something for you in the future. And so after that, he went down to the city, all of that, right? And then come to show, they do some things in the city, and then they leave. Elijah leaves the city. And then towards the end, we after Jezebel and stuff like that, he goes towards, I won't say the end of his ministry, but the end of his walk. So he's with Elisha, and he tells Elisha, he's like, Elijah and Elisha. Elijah said to Elisha, Please do not follow me. Elisha was like, Nah, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to stick by your side. I'm never going to leave you nor forsake you. So that's what we should be like towards God. We should always tell him we're never going to leave him, we're never going to forsake him, and that's what you should do. Because if you don't, then I don't know. That's up to him and you, and I don't know whatever after that. All right? And Elisha is like, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to stay with you until the end of the days. And Elijah's like, okay. A couple verses later, Elijah's like, I'm telling you, you should stay here. I don't want you coming with me. Elisha's like, nope. I'm staying with you. I ain't leaving. I'm definitely not leaving. And so Elijah was like, okay, all right, stick with me. And then a couple verses later, he's like, Elisha, I'm telling you, you really, really don't want to go to this place with me. You really don't want to go. And Elisha's like, no, I'm sticking with you, man. It's like ride or die. We're together and we're there. We're together and we're stuck together. You told me to be with you until the end, and I'm not going back on that word. So they're not changing the word. They're not doing anything. So then Elisha's like, all right, I'm sticking with you. And Elijah is like, all right, okay. Elijah's probably thinking in his head, this guy is crazy. Like, I know I told him to do this, but like, he really wants to do this. He really believes in me. So then Elijah's like, all right. So they head down to this river. The river of Cherith, I'm pretty sure it is, or a river of, I don't know. So they get to this river, and so what Elijah does is hits the ground. The river widens right up, just like Moses. hits the ground and widens right up. They walk onto the dry land. They walk over. And Elijah's like, all right, Elisha. He's like, my time's done. He's like, is there anything that I can do for you? And Elisha's like, could you give me a portion, a double portion of what you have? And so I'll just, instead of just saying it, go to 2 Kings 2, 1 through 14. So it says right here, it says, and it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went and with Elisha and Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. So right here is where the first time he tells him to tarry in this place. And then Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as the soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yeah, I know it. Hold ye your peace. And Elijah said unto him, Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho. And the sons of the prophets that were in Jericho came to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, yeah, I know it. Hold your peace. And Elijah said to him, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they two went on. And 50 men of the prophets went and stood to view afar, and they too stood by Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither. They two went over on dry land. And it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee, before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I be taken away from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. So in those two paragraphs right there that I just talked, verse 9 and 10, it's basically, that's where I just left off. Elijah is asking Elijah asked Elisha what he wanted. And Elisha was like, I want a double portion of what you have. So he's telling him he wants a double portion of God in his life than what Elijah had. So he wanted more of the faith and of the things that Elijah did in his life. That's big. Elisha did a lot of stuff in his life to sacrifice for God and to do for God. And Elisha, like he just said, he's like, that's really big to ask. And he was like, well, that's not up to me, that's up to God. And he's like, and God heard it all, and Elisha was like, okay. And Elijah told him, if you see fire and chariots coming from the sky to pick me up and carry me home, that is the sign of you getting the double portion. And Elisha was like, okay, all right. I mean, guessing being Elisha, he's probably really scared. And there's going to be fire coming out of the sky with like horses and stuff. And I would be scared. I think all of us would be scared. Unless you're saved. Hey, I mean, that means something if you're saved. But during this time, Elisha's like, okay, whatever you say, as long as I can get my double portion. As long as I can get double the power of God that you had during this time. And then it says, and it came to pass, in verse 11, and it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes, and rent them in two pieces. So in this final part right here, it says, Elisha saw the chariots. So that means in Elisha's mind, he knew that he got the double portion. And he knew that whatever Elisha said to him was exactly true. So during this time, that's what we should, in our lives personally, we should ask God if we can have a double portion. Amen. We need that double portion in our lives because doing what God says is good, but doing what God says times 2 is even better. A double portion is always better. In your mind, it should always be a lot better because, one's better than 2. 1 Twinkie's better than 2 Twinkies. Or no, 1 Twinkie's less better than 2 Twinkies. I'd like 2. But so during this time, he wants this double portion. He gets this double portion. And Elisha now has his own ministry that he does. Elisha goes through. He helps people just like Elijah did. He does just as much, just as more, does more for God, or just as much to more for God than Elijah did. And that's the mindset we should have. So Victor is our youth, there's a pastor now, was youth pastor when I first started coming. I wanted to follow him and God. He was my main example when I first came into youth group because he was always there. He's the one that taught me most of the stuff. And then I took that perspective into this. This is what taught me everything I know. This is what you need to know. He will suggest you. This is what he suggests right here. This is what's going to teach you. He can teach you some things, but you don't know the knowledge until you actually read, until you actually pray, until you actually know the Scripture. That's what you're going to know is if you do it. You can't just have him say things to you and you're going to be like, okay, all right, yeah. No, you can't just sit in your bum and have him say everything to you. You have to get into the Bible. You have to actually learn it yourself too. Because from other people, you can't just know exactly what God's saying to you. You actually have to pray to him. He'll talk to you through that. And so that's what Elisha did through the rest of the stories. And then coming to close it out, Elijah and Elisha. Elisha was super faithful to Elijah. And Elijah was super faithful to God. We should be the Elijah to be faithful to God and to learn and to know the knowledge of what God wants us to do. We should always have faith. That's the one thing that's the first thing that we talked about was faith. He had faith in the river and in God that he would get fed, that he would have water for a time being. And then he also had faith that God would bring him to another place. And so he did. He brought him to another place, and that faith was to be with that widow woman, to help her live. And then there's one thing, and is don't blame others, but have faith in God. Don't make others think, well, don't put others down because you didn't have faith in God in that certain moment. That's the worst thing. Do not put others down because that's how it just falls. And another one, then it says, don't be discouraged when you're told no. If you're told no by God that you can't do a certain thing, don't be discouraged. He'll do something else, but in that time being, he didn't want you to do that certain thing. Like, I don't know, if he doesn't want you to preach a certain area, then don't preach that certain area. Maybe someone doesn't need it right now. If he wants you to preach that certain area, he'll tell you to. That's how you know that God is telling you to do something. Don't be discouraged if he goes, skip over chapter number 3. I don't think it needs to be used right now. Don't be discouraged. If it's in here, like half the time, if you go to preach and your mind gets changed, that's not yourself. That's God. That's God telling you he doesn't want you to preach that right now. Maybe something else is on someone else's heart. And that's what should be on everybody's heart, is to get something from the message that someone's preaching towards you. Because if you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, cool, he just preached about Elijah. Elijah didn't do that good things. He kind of parted water. He kind of slew people with fire, and I don't think it's real. Okay, no, that's not what we should be like. So in this message that I just brought forth to you guys, I hope you guys learn that you should be faithful to God. You should also don't blame others and have faith in God. And the third one is don't be discouraged if he tells you no. I'm thankful for that. Everyone can stand up, and we'll have a special or something. Okay. No, like this.
I don't think, I mean, that's good. You know, see,
Okay.
What you see, again, is a lot of years of pouring into. This isn't Damien's first rodeo, but, he's right when he says, I don't know how on earth, if you know the story of Elijah, how Elijah could have got to the point where he was. He had provision. He was provided for and then some. The guy's literally in a drought and he gets food and water. He had purpose. He was there next to that lady. He literally revived her son. I mean, he was, what greater, miracle than that? He had